China, industrializing for the last 20 or 30 years, is putting carbon dioxide by millions and millions of tons a day into the global atmosphere. They have the legal right to do this within their territorial boundaries, right? And the Earth Constitution says no. The atmosphere of the Earth belongs to the people of Earth, right? The oceans of the Earth, which are now being destroyed by overfishing and the so-called Convention of the Sea, isn't working at all. Environmentalists point this out right and left. The oceans of the Earth are dying, but those oceans belong to the people of Earth, just as the air and the water and the lungs of the Earth, the forests, everything necessary to make a healthy living for future generations. They belong to, that's why the people of Earth need to be sovereign, right? So anyway, that's kind of a summary of all this stuff that go in Article 4. It gives real authority to the government, and I think it's necessary if they're going to salvage the Earth. Okay, Article 5, functions and powers of the World Parliament. It's a parliamentary system, right? The ultimate authority in this system is the World Parliament, and it's got, as you know, it's got three houses: the House of Peoples, the House of Nations, and the House of Councillors. And the House of Peoples is by far the largest house. It will have 1,000 representatives from 1,000 electoral districts around the world, roughly equal by population. Then the House of Nations will have 1, 2, or 3 representatives from each nation, and the nations decide how they're going to choose these representatives. So the bigger nations with large populations, they'll have 3 representatives in the House of Nations. Little tiny nations like Haiti or Cuba will have 1 representative in the House of Nations. So you maybe will have 300 people there. And then there'll be 200 people in the House of Councillors. And this is a unique feature of this Constitution, because the House of Councillors is an attempt to get wise people into government. And so students and faculty around the world, from the 20 world administrative districts, the 1,000 electoral districts will be clumped together in 20 world administrative districts, and students and faculty will be voting to nominate the best people, right? The students know who their professors are, who are great environmentalists or great human rights leaders and so on. The best people will be nominated, and then they will be elected by the other 2 houses of the World Parliament. And so we'll have 200 people who have a unique role. The House of Councillors has a unique role. Primarily its role is nominations for positions, right? So it isn't like the United States where you get into Congress real dumb people, right? Let's just face it, there's some mighty dumb people there, this Marjorie Greene who comes in with her gun and so on. This will attempt to get wise people who represent the good of the whole into the World Parliament. So these 1,500 people are the ultimate authority, and then under them there's the various organs, right? And in terms of Article 6, one of the organs is the World Executive, so the World Executive, like all the other organs, this is a very important point. There's no single person elected to head these agencies, any of the agencies, right? The World Executive will be a presidium of 5 persons, and they'll have a World Cabinet of 20 to 30 persons. And these 5 persons will be elected by the World Parliament in joint session, in combined session. And so they will be the head of the World Executive, and their job, like any executive branch, is to implement the decisions of the legislative branch, to implement all the programs that are necessary to run a world. And so they will be the head of the world administration, right? And you'll have, just to jump ahead, you can see at the end of the world administration on pages 47 and 48, there's 28 different departments, right? Department on multinational corporations, a Department of Transportation, Department of Commerce and Industry, a Department of Science and Technology, Department of Education, and so on, Department of Democratic Procedures, right? So their job is to just run the Earth Constitution, run the world government according to the Earth Constitution. Notice number 4 on page 44, item 6.6, limitations on the world executive. Okay, the world executive may not at any time alter, suspend, abridge, or infringe, or otherwise violate any provision of this world constitution. 6.6.2, the world executive may not have veto power. So much better than the US system, right, with the stupid veto power given to the president. It may not veto, right? The world executive may not dissolve the world parliament or any house of the parliament. World executive may not act contrary to the decisions of the world courts. The world executive is bound faithfully to execute all legislation, right? The world executive may not transcend or contradict the decisions and controls of the world parliament, the world judiciary, and the provisions of this constitution by any device of executive order, executive privilege, or emergency declaration or decree. Not only that the world attorneys general, right, the prosecutors in the world courts and so on, in the world civilian world police are not under the authority of the world executive like they are in the United States, right? The world police are completely, and the world attorneys general are a completely independent agency responsible directly to the world parliament. So this executive is not going to have any enforcement means by which to disrupt, right? The executive is always a dangerous thing. In the modern world of supersonic weapons carrying nuclear warheads, right, the executive branches have become immensely powerful, right, and legislative and judicial much less so in all these countries, right, because you got to have that presidential football carried around in case they want to wipe out humanity, you know, in some decision, you know. It's ridiculous. It's absurd. So the world administration this is Article 7, functions under the leadership of the executive cabinet, and this describes the functioning of the administration and in what way the departments of the administration will be staffed and so on. And what they will be doing, every person who's in the executive cabinet of the Presidium has 5 people, right? It requires, when the World Parliament elects these 5, it requires that they be elected 1 from each continent, right? So you can't have 2 from any one continent. You've got to have 1 from Asia, 1 from Europe, 1 from North America, 1 from South America, 1 from Africa, right? And this is the same with the other, all the other agencies. 5, they're all run by a presidium of 5, often supplemented by larger cabinets and so on. But there's no single person that's ever the head of anything in this Constitution, right? So the departments we looked at listed on page 47 and 48. The integrative complex, very important, and I could spend hours on this, but I won't, Bob. because we have one more item after Article 8. But the integrative complex is available to all the organs of government. Their job is to serve the parliament, and to serve the houses of parliament, and to serve the administration, and to serve the world ombudsman and everything else. So they're staffed by people who are experts and from the World Civil Service Administration, which is the very first of these 7 different agencies.